everyone! My name's Katie Montgomery, I'm a trans woman, and I used to be transphobic. When I was little, I used to be a boy. But even from an early age, I knew that I would rather be a girl. I used to wish that I could wake up as a girl, like, you know, whenever you get to blow out all the candles on the birthday cake, or whenever you blow like a dandelion clock off or something and you get a wish, I used to wish that I could wake up as a girl, or that I would have always been born as a girl, or that I could be born as a girl in a future life, or something like that. I used to wish for like 3 things. I used to wish that I could be a girl. I used to wish for the Lego electric train set, because how cool is that? Why did I say 3? I can't think of the third one. Well, that's the only 2 important things in life, to be honest. The Lego electric train set and being a girl. I actually got both in the end.
Success!
I actually used to think that all boys wanted to be girls, because obviously if you were given a choice between being a boy and a girl, you would pick a girl. Because, I mean, that's obvious. So I used to think that the reason that boys used to say that boys were better than girls was some kind of like coping with that. You know, like where you tell yourself that you're better than someone because you're insecure about it. It doesn't really make sense. I don't think much makes sense when you have a 6-year-old's worldview, but it was just something that I kind of thought and didn't really think about much. And I just knew the important thing was that I wasn't allowed to talk about wanting to be a girl because girls are yucky or whatever. I think my earliest memory of wanting to be a girl is probably from when I was in year 1 at school, so that's probably when you're like 5 or 6 years old. At that age, I had no idea what a trans person was. I'd never encountered a trans person. And in the 90s, when we were at school, we had a law called Section 28, which was brought in by Margaret Thatcher.
But it's the plight of individual boys and girls which worries me most. Too often, our children don't get the education they need, the education they deserve. Children who need to be taught to respect traditional moral values are being taught that they have an inalienable right to be gay. All of those children are being cheated of a sound start in life. Yes, cheated.
What the idea of the law was to stop public institutions from promoting homosexuality, which in practice just meant that teachers weren't allowed to talk about LGBT issues at all. And I think lots of teachers just didn't even acknowledge that LGBT people existed because it was kind of unclear what does promoting homosexuality mean? It kind of means nothing. And so people were worried about what happens, you know, if you just acknowledge that gay people are real. Does that mean you lose your job, or, you know, the media might destroy you? So I think a lot of people just chose not to, or just didn't talk about LGBT issues. So that meant I learned all of my information about what a trans person was when I finally did encounter them from kids on the playground and from the media, which is a bad way to learn about anything. I actually remember one of the first times that I was told what a tranny was by some kid at school, I'm not going to name them, who told me that some crazy men, want to cut off their willy and sew it to their bum. I have no idea. I don't know where that's come from. For anyone who doesn't know, that isn't what happens. But it was definitely presented in a way that made this sound like a terrible thing. And so that's just what I absorbed. I guess maybe I was a gullible kid. I'm sure most kids are quite gullible. But I definitely got my idea that all LGBT people were bad from how other kids talked about them. I mean, this was the 90s when gay was like the insult. It was the thing that everyone called absolutely everything. If someone found out you liked the wrong kind of Pokemon, that meant you were gay. Like, it was just it was used to the point of completely being meaningless, and just obviously in a very homophobic way. But yeah, so all of my encounters with LGBT people and particularly trans people were just that it was bad, and I understood that LGBT people and particularly trans people were bad from how, you know, the media and everyone reacted to them. One of the classic and most influential examples for me was the film Ace Ventura, which was, I guess, a kid's film, and in it, at the end, there's a scene where everyone finds out that the bad person isn't a real woman, they're actually a disgusting trans person.
What the hell are you talking about?
She's not Lois Einhorn. She's Ray Finkel. She's a man.
He's lying.
Shut up! If the lieutenant is indeed a woman, as she claims to be, then, my friend, she is suffering from the worst case of hemorrhoids I have ever seen! That's why Roger Podacter is dead! He found Captain Winky!
I think that things like this, especially for children, teach you that being trans is bad almost more efficiently than if you just said trans people are bad. Because if you just say, oh, trans people are bad, people might think, oh, why is that? You know, and like start asking questions. But if you encounter a new concept in your world and all of the adults around you who you respect, and, you know, this funny man in a film and stuff, they're reacting with disgust, it teaches you that you should react with disgust. And I think it's a very efficient way of controlling, particularly what kids think, but anyone, is to show, you know, it's like lead by example, and it does work. People do get their understanding of things by just copying other people and seeing how they react to things. Ace Ventura wasn't the only one. There's loads of examples of you know, films and fictional characters and stuff where the only time a trans person is ever in a film in the 90s is when they are the bad person, they're a joke, or there's something disgusting for everyone, like everyone to. And it wasn't just fictional films where that was the case. In the rare occasion that trans people were ever in, you know, real life trans people were featured, they were also treated like that. And another very classic example is Jerry Springer.
I'm really a man.
I want to beat this. You have a secret.
Yes.
What's your secret?
I was born to be a man.
I was born a boy. Baby, I know it's hard for you to like understand because, you know.
So you're a man?
No, I'm not a man. I was born a boy.
Freak?
A freak?
Touch me?
So I'm a freak now. So this is what it is? Won't you talk to me?
Freak?
She cheating on me or something?
Tell him I'm a man for.
I was born a man.
No.
I'm a man.
Man, you a man.
I wasn't trying to play you.
In things like Jerry Springer, any trans person who was on the show was treated like some kind of freak of nature zoo animal, like they'd, you know, as if they weren't even human. And I think that even more strongly than a film like Ace Ventura communicates to like a child watching that this is how you react to trans people. When there's, you know, this person on TV who's like the presenter who you're meant to respect, and then there's a room of like 100 people and a trans person comes out and everyone reacts in disgust. It just says this is how society reacts to trans people, and, you know, this is the normal way to do it, and it really teaches you that that's like a normal reaction to a trans person, like to treat them as if they don't even have emotions, which is horrific. Although I onboarded all of this, you know, bullshit about trans people, I understood that they were a bad thing and that that people react to them in disgust and that they were all failures and they were all losers and they were all perverts and they all have, no, they can't have a family and all this kind of stuff. They're like the sort of at the edges of society. I kind of onboarded all that and just believed it because I was an idiot. But even though I held all of those like horrible positions and believed all these horrible things about trans people, I don't think I was ever malicious about it. I didn't hate trans people. I didn't go out of my way to say horrible things about them. I've never talked about them at all. I never really encountered trans people in real life until after I came out. I wasn't like this hateful, we must stop trans people kind of person. But all of my positions on trans people, all of my understanding of trans people was transphobic, because it was irrational prejudice of trans people. Like it's literally me prejudging trans people based on some nonsense idea that I have. And I think people can get quite defensive at the idea, what you think here is actually, based on a transphobic prejudice. For a lot of people, sounds like you're saying you hate trans people. I don't think all transphobia is hatred. Lots of it is, most of it I think is just ignorance. I think a lot of people, when they hear transphobic, they think that means hating trans people. A bit like when they hear, homophobic, they think it means hating gay people, as if you want to like make their lives worse just out of pure spite and malice. And that isn't the case. Transphobia is any irrational prejudice of trans people, and I think most of it is like what I was, ignorance. You don't have to be a horrible person, you don't have to be a hateful person at all. All this is you've believed something that you've been told, or you've just kind of absorbed from society that just isn't true, and you are using it to judge people that you don't know. And I think that's kind of, sadly, it's kind of a normal human reaction. So, I actually believed all of this garbage about trans people for a long time, and it really did stop me from coming out or researching about trans people or anything. When I got to being a teenager, or I guess for lots of my life, although I was kind of disgusted by and horrified by and scared of trans people as a concept, as I grew up, I also kind of was really interested in it, because, as I kind of understood that there were some people who were born boys and went on to live as women, that is obviously quite interesting for someone who kind of wanted to do that. But it was still very much attached to my bad, trans people are bad understanding. And it took quite a lot for me to be able to take that head on and change, get a better understanding. And it took me a long time to stop being transphobic. One of the first things that really kind of cracked through was Louis Theroux's documentary on transgender children. In that, there was some trans people who were normal, and they were just treated like normal people. And, doctors were talking to them like they were human. Louis Theroux talked to them like they were human. And in some cases, which I think was quite important, seeing kids doing it, there were some parents who just treated their kids like they were normal. And that really kind of broke down my first, this is how society should treat trans people kind of nonsense belief that I had onboarded, and showed me that that doesn't have to be the case. So that kind of then set me on a path of, was like, well, maybe I should actually research about this a bit more. Because I had watched, pretty much throughout my life, pretty much anything that had a trans person on, on the TV. Whenever there was a trans person on the TV, I would watch it, and I would always feel like weird about watching it and guilty and uncomfortable and all this kind of stuff. But I'd still just, even if trans people were being treated horribly, I've just kind of had some drive to watch it. Once I got to the stage in my life where I was like, I need to sort of understand this a bit better, I found a load of trans YouTubers and watched just hours of their content back to back. I went through this horrible depression period where I was, for about 6 months, where I was sleeping about 4 hours a day, and I was watching like 8 hours of trans YouTube and going to work. And the biggest first step for me was seeing trans people were just normal. And that can kind of sound really crappy and rubbish, but in like, why didn't you think trans people were people? I'm not saying like, oh, I thought they were literally aliens and then I realised they weren't. I'm saying that when you've got all these ideas that, oh, you know, this type of people, they're not normal, and then you just see them being normal, you just realise it's all nonsense, and like, they are the same as everyone else. And then obviously that then made me realise like, oh, that means I'm a trans person, which was like a scary realisation, and it took several months to process it all. And that isn't necessarily the point at which I completely stopped being transphobic, but I guess it was the point at which I had broken down the main barriers, and that, you know, there's loads of stuff to learn. Even trans people who have been out for years, or, you know, really good allies of LGBT people and stuff, they can still have some transphobic idea. You know, you just got to think like, oh, all trans people think this, and it's not true, and so that is kind of a type of irrational prejudice. But it doesn't mean it's hatred, it just means it's, you know, there's a lot of ignorance about trans people, and it takes a long time to learn it all. Yeah, so that's basically my story, and from the point at which I saw that trans people could be normal. I mean, not that I'm normal. I'm a guitarist in a death metal band, that's not very normal. But it showed me that I could be who I wanted to be, I guess, which also sounds really cringe and cliche, but it's true. So basically that is my story of how I was transphobic, and then I sort of learnt that it was wrong, and over a period of time came to realise that trans people are the same as everyone else, and that also I'm a trans person. Transphobia definitely held my life back. So, why did I make this video? Well, I think there's a few reasons. One is I want to show that people can improve and can learn and can become better. And I think that most people, most trans people, most allies of trans people who have, you know, who follow me on YouTube or on Twitter, they probably don't think, oh, you know, Katie's got an irredeemable past, she's a bad person, you know, she used to be transphobic, so she can't have a good position now. But I do think sometimes there are people who did once have a bad view, especially if you've been a public figure for a long time. You know, some public figures said something horrible about trans people in 1999, and now they've got a totally different opinion. And I think I just want to say that, you know, people can become better people. You can totally change your understanding. So people deserve the chance to apologise and become better people. Also, I think another point that I want to really hammer home is that transphobia doesn't just mean that you absolutely hate trans people. It's such a common defence, and they're like, I'm not transphobic because I don't hate trans people. Some of my best friends are trans people, which is obviously the classic defence. But you don't have to hate trans people to have some transphobic views. Like, it's just ignorance. If you're saying some nonsense like you think all trans women have a fetish for being women, like, if you think that, it's wrong. So, of course it's like an irrational prejudice. Where does it come from? You didn't come to that conclusion by doing a load of research or looking at the experts or talking to trans people. You came to that from believing some garbage that you just encountered randomly on the internet. Okay, fair enough. So someone says, oh, this view of yours is transphobic. Like, now you know. Now you can go away and research that, because obviously you don't want to just blindly believe someone else on the internet. But what you do want to do is be like, this view everyone is saying is transphobic, so maybe I should do some research and find out whether it is or not. And then if it is, like, just change your mind, just become a better person. Like, what's the problem? Someone called you transphobic in the past. Like, okay, cool, well, I'm not transphobic anymore. Like, I'm not transphobic anymore. Well, I don't know, I might still have some nonsense views about trans people. Everyone's wrong sometimes. You can become a better person now. Anyway, thank you very much everyone for watching my video about how I, a trans person, used to be transphobic and then I got better. Maybe you had a similar path to, you know, learning about trans people, or maybe you feel like you had a totally different one. It'd be interesting if anyone's got a totally different story. Let me know, that'd be cool. This was my first ever edited video. Thank you very much for watching it. If you have any feedback or anything, then I'm definitely up for listening to it, because it would be great if I could make these videos even better. So thanks for watching. See you again soon. Bye.